IVM.
Hi, everybody. On behalf of the team at IVM Podcast, I have a request for you. We'd really appreciate it if you could go to ivmpodcast.com/survey and fill out our survey over there. It's going to take a few minutes to do, but it gives us some really interesting information that we can take to advertisers and brands about who's listening to the network. If you're comfortable giving us your email address while you're filling out the survey, we'll enter you into a random drawing where we'll be sending out a bunch of IVM swag to some of our listeners. Last year we sent out coffee mugs, and this year we're hoping to send out much cooler stuff. That's ivmpodcast.com/survey. We really appreciate your help.
Folks, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, B50 on Twitter, and today is a very special and a very unique episode. Also, one of those that we do slightly hutke, slightly different topic. Because today we're going to talk about careers, right? It's not a topic that we discuss often. We've done maybe one show in the past on careers in finance, and I actually want to do more on this. I've got a few requests for people from people, and it's a topic that I think we should do, at least for the young folks out there. So today we're going to talk about careers in economics and finance. And if you're wondering how economics and finance are connected, well, our guest will tell you all of that. So it's time to welcome our guest, Karan Shah, CEO at the Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics, or MDAE. Karan, welcome to Paisa Vaisa. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners. Let's start with a quick introduction to you and to MDAE.
So very good morning. Thank you so much, Anupam, for inviting me to your podcast. I've been a huge fan. You've crossed more than 200 episodes, and many congratulations on the impact that you're creating amongst the young audience there. Indeed, a pleasure to represent the Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. Sure. We have a very interesting topic, so I'll keep my introduction fairly brief. So my name is Karan, and I've worked at MDAE for the past 5 years. I've been part of the team right from the inception. And, before I dipped my feet in the world of academia, I used to be an investment banker. So I've been a trained sort of financial professional right from my beginning. My bachelor's as well as master's was in the topic. And at that time, investment banking was in its good wave. And I managed to work in the industry for about 3 years, first with the bulge bracket bank and later with a boutique sort of investment consulting firm. And my primary role there was to advise companies on fundraising as well as M&A in the telecom, media and technology space. So I'm still very intrigued by the financial services world. I still try and make investments, whatever little savings that I manage to have. It was a very interesting opportunity. A lot of people ask me how I actually made the switch. And I love to tell this to people. As an investment banker, I always felt the excitement was on the entrepreneur side. At the middle of the night, as bankers, we'd get a call saying if we don't manage to raise money in the next 2 weeks, we'll have to shut shop. And there'd be so much excitement on the other end of the table that I always wanted to be a part of something more exciting, more enthusiastic, and to some extent, game-changing. And that's where, the Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics was slowly being formed back in 2015. We are actually one of India's premier academies at the postgraduate level that trains students with an applied mindset in economics, finance, data analytics, and policy-related fields. So over the past, 5 odd years, we've traditionally offered, full-time courses. We have our flagship course, which is the postgraduate diploma in economics, where we've trained more than 200 plus students. These 200 students are now working in some of India's top companies across a variety of careers. We also have a very, very strong track record of our students being admitted into Ivy League universities in the West. And over the past year or so, we've now, ventured into the edtech space. We've created a whole new online live education vertical where we specialize in offering live online short-term courses over the weekends. We've now trained close to 1,200 students just during the pandemic. And, the academy is doing very well. And we hope to become one of the top 3 institutes of economics in the country in no time. So that's just a quick introduction about, me and the academy. Again, pleasure to, be here. And I'd love to share my 2 cents on the topic that we've discussed.
Lovely. Wow. Okay. So Karan, you're actually someone who's worked on the other side before coming out. A very interesting career change. You were right about that. But, I like the fact that you're doing this with a spirit of entrepreneurship. So, being someone who's actually worked in multiple roles and seeing finance, investment banking is as close as it can get. So I want you to walk our listeners through the various jobs that are there, okay? And I want to start with the role of an economist, okay? Because
Sure.
we're going to talk about careers in economics and in finance. So the first question, obviously, and like I had said, how exactly is economics related to finance? And the one thing that came to my mind is that the role of an economist is now fairly well established. You've got economists in banks, investment
Yeah.
banks, brokerages, credit rating agencies. So I wanted to walk our listeners through what exactly do economists do? Why is it that they're so important? The only thing that I know is probably that I'll see them on a CNBC and they'll be talking about GDP growth, inflation, IAP, stuff like that. So
Sure.
all the questions, one, what do they do? Two, why is it important?
Sure.
From a from a career perspective, why is what they do important for someone who wants to pursue finance? Just bridge that link for us now.
Sure, absolutely. So let me tackle your first question, which is, and I think it's a fairly important one because, as you said, a lot of people are familiar with seeing economists on televisions and reading about them. Actually, post the financial crisis, post 2008, the role of an economist has really, really emerged, right? And it's something that's very, very talked about. It's something that's in the news, and it's something that people are very, very engaged with and attracted to. So typically, Anupam, if whenever you walk into a cocktail party discussion and if someone mentions that they are an economist, inadvertently the question that follows is, okay, so where is the stock market headed, right? So now, while understanding markets is important for any economist, that's just a part of the role. If I had to break it down, an economist is simply somebody that studies the relationship between human behavior with supply and demand. As an economist, you conduct research, you monitor economic trends, whether that's IIP, GDP, unemployment, inflation, and develop forecasts which help in decision making, right? Now, for example, Reliance Jio has invested billions of dollars in setting up their telecom company, right? Now, Mukesh Ambani will be very, very keen to know what the impact of telecom prices is going to be in the next 5 years, right? Mr. Shaktikanta Das every day in the office is going to be thinking about what kind of measures he needs to take to bring inflation under control, right? Even simply us as individuals are making economic decisions every minute. Should we take a normal cab? Should we take an Uber? Right? Where should we go on holidays? What flight deals are currently in the market? Right? So economics forms the decision making process for us as individuals. Right?
Okay.
John Maynard Keynes, he's a sort of legendary economist. He perfectly describes an economist as somebody who has to be a mathematician, a historian, a statesman, and a philosopher, all in all in some degree. Somebody who understands symbols, speaks in words. He's incorruptible as an artist, but yet near to earth as a politician. So that's a very good sort of quote that I like to talk to students about when they ask me what really an economist is, right? Now, coming to the second part, which is, what do economists do, right? Now, take a simple tug of war relationship between a consumer and the business, right? The consumer wants the business to invest more, sell more products, prosper, set up more factories, and create more jobs, right? And thus, salaries go up. But the business is smart. The business is first waiting for consumers to buy more, create more demand, increase sales, and only then will he set up factories, hire more people, and increase salaries, right? So this classic chicken and egg paradox is something that economists deal with on a daily basis. Now, this simplified relationship is just a cog in the wheel in the entire equation of the economy, right? The economy comprises several million moving parts, each which are interconnected, each dependent on each other. And a strong economist has to grapple with these equations in order to have a sense of where the economy is headed, right? So that's essentially what economists do, right? Now, how is this entire bit linked to finance? See, as the world has become more globalized, everything that happens around us has an impact on the economy and thus on the firms. There's a very popular saying that goes, when America sneezes, the entire world catches a cold. Now, why is it that people say that? It's because supply chains are now integrated, right? when the Fed cuts rates, or when ECB follows a quantitative easing policy, or when the repo rate in India, rises, there are significant implications on businesses and thus the economy, right? So a financial analyst cannot study a balance sheet in a silo. He cannot ignore financial and political developments that are taking place around him, because all of that will have an impact on his forecasts, on his company's balance sheet, which is why a financial analyst that has a strong grounding in economics is what will make him very, very complete.
Very interesting. The connection wasn't really there, but thank you for making that, because really wondered what they do, but their breadth of knowledge, of course, is definitely quite intense. So let's now move to the finance part. You've given a nice overview of the economics part and what an economist does at these various agencies in these various companies. So now let's go to the other side. Let's talk about, say, the financial analyst role. What do they do?
Sure.
What is their job? And financial analysts are there across pretty much all sectors now. I believe some companies also tend to have them maybe on in the finance function, but of course, the places where you see them the most is, number one, you would know, investment banking, number two, brokerages, and number three, fund management. So, if you can just walk our listeners, just like you gave us an overview on the economist part, let's talk about the
Sure.
finance part now.
Sure. See, financial services, the industry is quite multifaceted, right? It offers a variety of positions catering to different skills, different interests. And in order to really get a strong understanding of the job opportunities that are available, we first need to have a look at the kind of landscape and understand the players in the market, right? So on the financial services side, typically you have the buy side and the sell side, right? On the sell side, you majorly have investment banking. Now, majorly investment banking comprises four functions, right? Each of these functions require analysts, associates, and senior managers at different levels of the hierarchy, right? So the first thing is something that obviously I worked on, which was M&A, where banks act as advisors to firms and structure M&A activity between them. They charge a commission in the middle. The second bit is loan syndication. Investment banks sort of gather corporate banks to arrange commercial loans for their clients, right? The third area is capital markets, where banks help companies raise money either through issuances of securities, whether that's stocks or bonds or a different kind of hybrid. And lastly, you have the sales, trading, and research teams, right? Now, when investment banks typically have securities, they need to maintain sales and trading teams to distribute them, right? And in order to effectively distribute them, they need to conduct research. They need to provide their clients with research as to why making a particular investment decision is wise or not. So on the sell side, you will see that M&A, loan syndication, capital markets, and finally sales, trading, and research. These are the four key departments in which you can get jobs, right? Now, different skills, different interests, different lifestyles across the four areas. Then coming on to the other side, which is the buy side, right? Now, on the buy side, you have players like mutual funds, private equity and venture capital, which of course is something that people read a lot about. You have portfolio management services. So basically, the buy side are basically comprising institutional investors or fund managers who take positions either for themselves or for their clients in public and private companies, right? So you'll see a mutual fund invest in the stock market. You'll see PMSs investing in the stock market. You'll see alternate investment funds investing in global securities. You'll see private equity companies investing in companies that are not listed, right? So again, all these 4 or 5 players require analysts, associates, and fund managers to help make strategic investment decisions, right? Typically, at the start of the career, whether you're on the buy side or the sell side, you will be sector agnostic, right? Because you're just starting off, you don't have expertise in a particular sector. So in all likelihood, you'll be assisting, let's say, an auto analyst or an oil and gas analyst or a pharma analyst, especially in the research function. So when you start, you remain agnostic. But slowly, as your expertise grows, as you spend more time in the sector, there are a good chance that you will become sectoral or thematic at some point, right? Because once you've developed expertise in that sector, you've closely monitored the universe of of stocks within the sector, you will bound to have a certain level of expertise, right? Now, apart from, as I said, apart from careers that are available on the buy side and the sell side, with some of the functions that we laid out, there are recruitment opportunities which are also available with other market participants, right? So you look at commercial banking, which is traditionally wholesale and retail banking. You will have, commercial bank hiring in the corporate banking team that generates business, the credit team that evaluates credit proposals, and the risk team that basically figures the credit worthiness and understands whether to lend or not, right? Another participant, in the sector that you can explore opportunities with is the insurance and the reinsurance space. India is traditionally a very, very underinsured market. And over the past few years, you've seen a whole host of private insurance players stepping up. Now, it's not just the LICs, it's also the private players that are coming out, setting up big teams. The requirement for actuaries in the statistical modeling team, in the predictive analytics team, or the sort of requirement of distributions and sales experts has really, really shot off the roof. So insurance is another area that you can explore opportunities in. The third thing is personal finance. There is, with the increase of financial literacy, especially amongst the youth, the emergence of personal financial advisors has also really been on the rise, right? The youth are going and seeking formal advice as to how they need to be making investment decisions. How can they save for major expenses in the next few years? And personal finance is something that's also very, very exciting. Apart from all of this, a large sort of area that has come up, especially in the past 5-8 years, is the financial technology players or the fintechs, right? They have completely sort of disrupted the service offerings in financial services, right? And fintechs are currently one of the largest players recruiting in financial markets today, right? So, I just wanted to give you a lay of the land in terms of the buy side, the sell side, the other participants, and a new age player like the fintechs that have come in. And these are some of the career opportunities that one can explore in financial services.
Yeah, that's a whole lot. I mean, that's a really long list, both for the economics part and for the financial analyst part. I mean, when I joined the industry back in 1999, a long time ago, it was quite different. And
Yep.
insurance and mutual funds were still small, but now obviously they've grown and the opportunities have also come. So as new
Yeah.
opportunities come and as new sectors open up, obviously the requirements change. So now I
Yeah.
wanted to walk our listeners through what it takes to get these jobs, because some of these are actually very satisfying in terms of a career. I mean, you've been an investment banking analyst, so you know that, of course, there are long hours, there are very, very long hours, but it's also a whole lot of
Yes.
fun if you're someone who's interested in, say, deep diving into annual reports, making presentations to pitch to clients, and then actually, maybe seeing one of the issues or one of the stocks that you worked on actually do well, whether you're in investment banking or whether you're in, like you said, the buy side or in the sell side, or some that appeals to a lot of people. And then, of course, there is the entire sheer pace of the markets, being tuned in every day. And it has its own excitement. But obviously, this is a very competitive field. It is
Yeah.
something that
Yeah.
also asks a lot in terms of the people who want to come in. So let's have this, just like you gave us a nice detailed explanation of economics, jobs in that, and finance and jobs in that. Walk us through what it takes to get these jobs, whether it is either from the skills perspective, from the education perspective,
Yeah.
for both the economist part and the financial analyst part.
Sure. So, as I said, there are a couple of skills that are required across both the professions. See, I largely think, people who can work hard, are diligent, have strong analytical and critical thinking will do well in every field, irrespective of the sector, whether you're a financial analyst, economist, whether you're a treasury professional, whether you're a sales guy, or whether you're a, corporate banking professional, right? But if I were to sort of boil my answer down to three key skills that you will need to succeed, these three would be what I would highlight. The first one is mathematical ability. Ability to deal with data in a quantifiable manner, whether that's big data or otherwise. See, as a young economist or a financial analyst, numeracy is a key skill. You need to be able to think in numbers and talk in numbers. right?
Mhm.
Especially with the advent of big data, the way in which research is carried out, Anupam, now is very, very different from how it was carried out when you were, you were in the industry, right? Data is now available in frequency and depth, which was previously absolutely unimaginable. And with the computing power that is available today, you can crunch data within seconds and get insights from information.
Yeah.
Analysts who have the skills to do this will thrive, right? So, irrespective of whether as a financial analyst you're looking at Maruti's share price or whether as an economist you're monitoring the Indian economy, right? You don't need to be a computing genius or a hardcore coder, but as long as you can wrangle with basic data, you will do just fine. So, I would highlight mathematical, numerical skills as one of the first key elements you need to succeed in the
So
industry.
I'm going to, in fact, now just hold you out there because I think
Sure.
this is a fantastic point, and I want
Yeah.
to just delve on the importance of it, Karan, right? Because
Yeah.
you've said data analysis, and numeracy. Can we just talk about the softer aspects? I'll give you
Sure.
an example out here, right? So I'm a chartered accountant, and I
Great.
remember when I was doing audits back in the day, long time ago. I was at a cement plant in some part of Maharashtra, and we were doing the closing inventories.
Great.
So, and this is
Okay.
anything that's year end stuff is like you have to spend a few all nighters, and that's
Of
absolutely
course.
fine. That's absolutely normal. So there I am. I've done
Yeah.
this audit of I don't know how many depots and how many godowns, warehouses, and I've anyway. After I've
Correct.
done all that, and I go to my boss and tell him, like, okay, I'm done and I'm going home. The guy says, okay, that's good. So what's the closing stock number? And I
Sure.
had no idea. I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. He asked me for just one number. And this reminds me a lot about time when I was a sell side analyst, and where when you're talking to a
Sure.
fund manager or when you're talking to a head of research, you need to have an ease. You need to have a
Yes.
familiarity with numbers. You
Correct.
don't so it comes to a point where you're not forcing yourself to remember stuff. Like if
Exactly.
if anybody asks you, just give me, what was Maruti's EPS 10 years ago. So you
Correct.
should not have to remember these numbers by heart.
Should be
Can you
intuitive.
Yeah, so can you just 1 minute maybe just spend some time on the
Sure.
softer aspects of why this is so important?
So, as I said, see, numbers is the financial professionals, constantly you have to convince somebody, right? As an analyst, you're convincing your head of research. The sales guy is convincing the client, right? The general partners are convincing the limited partners. At every stage, there is a certain degree of convincing. See, 10 years ago, you could get away by qualitatively sharing your experience and saying, okay, I've analyzed the auto industry for 10 years now. So I know that the recent slump in car sales is only temporary. And the minute COVID situation improves, car sales
Ah.
will increase.
So
You
that's
could
more
have
of
got
an
away with that, right?
intuitive call. You're saying that I've studied this, I've studied that. So that used to be what it was in the
Exactly.
past. Times have changed.
Exactly. And now it's purely quantitative, right?
Wow.
Because people are not convinced until you can explain data, which is why, another profession, and it's not something I'm going to be speaking about, but it's something that the listener should know is one thing is to do analytics, the other thing is to do visualizations. You have to be storytellers, and the numbers have to support your storyline.
Oh man,
So it's very, very,
you're really, this is, I love this topic. I wish we could do a separate
yeah.
recording on this because you're right. If you're not able to, sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all, not at
It is
all.
something that
I'm just enjoying.
I feel strongly about. I think we're just kind of diverting a little bit,
Correct.
but my bad. Let's
No,
just
no,
go back to
absolutely.
the other two requirements. Sorry guys, sorry. This is
Sure.
something that I love. This is something that I really love. Go on, Karan. Sorry.
Great. So as I said, we spoke about numeracy and mathematical skill, and the second thing is something that we dwelled upon, which was the communication aspect. See, the nature of an economist or a financial analyst requires them to write extensive reports on a regular basis, right? Again, we're talking a lot about the auto sector. So let's say Maruti, right? So as an analyst, you need to have a view on where Maruti stock price is headed every quarter. So you analyze their quarterly earnings, you attend management calls, and you form a view. Once you form it, you need to appropriately articulate it in the form of a report. Now, no matter how good your analysis is, right? No matter what tools, techniques, data, no matter what you have done, unless you are able to effectively articulate your positioning or your stance on the stock price, it's going to be worthless. And the same holds true for an economist. Only thing is that instead of analyzing a company, he's doing that for a large scale economy. One of the we've spoken about the benefits, but one of the banes of being an economist or a financial analyst is you have to always have an opinion. If somebody comes and asks you, where do you think the Indian economy is headed, or where do you think Maruti stock price is headed, if you're an analyst, you can't say I don't know, we'll see, right? You have to always have an opinion, and it better be an intelligent one. So the communication skills are absolutely paramount, right? So numbers help you, do your research, and words help you communicate your research. So these are the two sort of core critical pillars that I think every listener should be working on. And lastly, and I think this is the most important point, and this is not something that you read or learn about every day, but one of the most important skills you need to succeed in the field is curiosity. You have to challenge what you read in the papers. You need to question, you need to inquire, do your own groundwork, and form an opinion. Be curious of what is happening around you. There are a lot of political and financial developments taking place on a day-to-day basis. And unless you develop a big picture thinking, you will not be a holistic, complete analyst. Gone are those days where you could analyze, let's say, India or Maruti in a silo. You have to analyze it in the context of the economy and the world, right? So these are the three key skill sets that I think you need to succeed as a economist or a financial analyst. Now these are largely general, but if you do have a strong grip over these three aspects, I think one can really succeed in the field, right?
So, guys, I'm going to recap that for you. Number one is like seriously important numeracy and data skills. You have to be very comfortable with numbers. You have to be very comfortable with lots and lots of numbers. You guys are going to be dealing with Excel files that run into multiple sheets, multiple rows, multiple columns. All of that has to be stored in your head. Okay. And it's not easy. Second, what Karan said was communication. Oh, what a super point. So communication, guys, is actually more than just writing. Okay. Because only, and that's where the third part comes in, but I'll just talk about the communication part. Communication is also talking. Believe me, if you are, say, a sell side analyst talking to a client, which is a fund manager, or if you're a fund manager talking to his client, which could be an HNI, could be a family office, could be whatever, guys, spans of attentions are destroyed these days. I mean, that's the reason why they have something called the elevator pitch, right, Karan?
Exactly.
So,
Absolutely.
talking, writing, you've got to be the best of the best. And finally, Karan, what a fantastic point, Karan. Curiosity, the ability to be curious, and I would just want to probably add one thing is the ability to challenge consensus. How important is that, Karan? The critical thinking and being able to challenge consensus, and when people are saying that no XYZ will happen, you actually think on the other direction and figure out just 2 minutes on that.
Absolutely, because if you're not challenging the conventional wisdom, the same problem that you highlighted earlier, right? Then it's about memory, right? Are you going to remember that article 5 years down the line and form a view on it? So unless you have really understood the fundamental root cause, right? You will not be able to be an intuitive analyst, right? You can memorize, you can sort of learn up some of the sales figures, the EPS numbers, the PE ratios, and come out. But you look at and I've heard you talk about, I think, and this is something that you also cover in some of the books, Anupam, that you have written, and is that people need to understand what they're saying. Unless and until they understand what they're saying, unless and until you can go 4 levels deeper or 5 levels deeper, you haven't really understood the topic, right? Which is why it's very important that when you read an article in the paper, you need to question it. Is this really true? Is it really true that the Indian stock markets currently are in the overbought zone, right? It's one thing that the Economic Times says it is, because there's COVID happening, and at the same time Sensex is at the all-time high. So Economic Times says it is overbought. But have you done your own analysis? Do you know why it is overbought? Is it really overbought, or is this a promise of a very, very brighter future that the country has in the next 5 years, right? And people don't mind paying a premium for it. So unless and until you have that questioning instinct, it's very, very tough to develop a holistic view.
Yeah, Karan, I'm going to wrap up this first part with just one thing. Karan, just tell us, since you've been an investment banking analyst, I've been a sell-side analyst. I think I wanted to just wrap this first part up by telling us what's at stake out here. See, because in my view, careers now, whether it's a Virat Kohli, whether it is Bumrah, whether it is a Shah Rukh Khan, whether it is whoever, life is essentially your career is only as good as your last performance.
Correct.
What's at stake out here? What does it take to become a rock star in investment banking? What does it take to become a rock star in fund management? What does it take to become a rock star in sell side? I mean, if you're someone who really loves this and you put in all your effort into it, what's there to gain? Just give us an idea of that.
Well, it's a trick question because if I really did know the answer to that, I hope I'd be at a slightly better level. Unfortunately, there is no mantra. There is no shortcut to success. Unfortunately, there isn't a sort of set pattern that can help you become a rock star in any of the fields. Two, three things, and these are some broad-based tips that I would also like to leave with our listeners. Is the first thing is, you need to be a lifelong learner, right? When I talk about being a lifelong learner, it's not about learning new math skills or a new programming language or new artificial intelligence skills. It could be anything, right? It could be to learn how to use a new instrument, or it could be to learn a new foreign language. Unless and until you develop your mind to be a lifelong learner until you die, you're not really going to succeed, right? It's very, very important to be sort of satisfied with where you are. And until and unless you have that thought process, it's going to be very, very hard to succeed. Second thing is hard work and diligence. As an investment banker, I still remember, Anupam, back in 2012 when I was doing my post graduation, and a lot of people around us wanted to be investment bankers, and largely because that was all what they would read about in the newspaper, right? That Etihad has acquired Jet. There was a $5 billion transaction, and then you have some of these cool bankers wearing suits, driving Mercedes, right on the front page. It was the lifestyle that they sold, right? And a lot of young folks like me got very inspired, and I said, this is exactly the kind of life that I want to lead, and this is the car I want to drive, and this is how I want to look when I go to work. And I remember when it was my first day at a bulge bracket bank, and I was there till 4:30 in the morning, and I realized this is a lot of hard work. So until and unless you're really, really passionate about that space, don't get into it.
Wow.
Because the passion might just dry up, right? What you think you're actually passionate about, you may not be, right? So experiment, do internships, go out there, learn about the industry, read some books, mentally challenge yourself. That's the only way you'll grow. Don't be afraid to change, don't be afraid to switch. But yes, I mean, think of your career as a long-term sort of consistent compounding investment, right? Don't look at it every week and say, is this taking me one step further? Is this where I want to be? Give it some time. We're seeing a lot of job switches. We're seeing youngsters go from one company to other. I've seen CVs where in a 5-year span, that guy has changed 8 or 9 jobs.
Wow.
In my head, he's not even given himself a chance to do well at one of those.
Yeah.
So there's a lot at stake. You need to be very, very careful with your career choices. But
yeah, you're right. You're reminding me of the time when the budget used to come out and we used to put in those. Yeah, I remember going back home at some 6-7 in the morning. Yeah. So people
exactly.
People think of it as something called work-life balance out there, guys. Might just want to have a sip of the coffee. I'm having some right now, and maybe you want to just take a break for that. But you're going to take a break right now on this. Really, we're already half an hour time. It's such a good conversation, guys. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back, because on the other side of this break, we're going to talk about how technology has disrupted a lot of skills. Okay, things have changed, and what areas are actually hiring right now. Karan knows all of that, and of course, we're going to give you a whole lot of tips over and above what we spoke in this first part. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So everybody, please do help us out with our survey. If you haven't filled it out yet, it's on ivmpodcast.com/survey. This survey is really helpful for us. And, fill out the survey completely, and we'll put you into a lucky draw, and we will send you some IVM swag. And what a great week of episodes we had, and what an eventful week we had. Let me run through some of the episode highlights really quickly. On Paisa Vaisa, Samir Nair of Applause Entertainment was on to discuss the web series Scam 1992. Great conversation with Anupam was had. Do check that out. Bhavish Sumaya of Hasbro was on Advertising is Dead. On Positively Unlimited, Chetna is starting a new series from A to Z. This week, Align. Do check that out. And on GabyCD, Farhad and Sunetra asked the question, what if they were straight? Interesting conversation. Definitely do check that out. I think you'll enjoy that. And one piece of news for you guys. Cyrus Says is now live on YouTube every weekday at 10 a.m. If you go to our IVM Podcast YouTube channel, you'll be able to catch us over there. And stay tuned for a lot more video content coming out in the next couple of weeks. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
And welcome back to this really special episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Karan Shah, CEO at Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. In the first part, we spoke about a lot of stuff. So let's just get straight to the second part. Karan, so I'm a chartered accountant. I mean, you also would have probably an MBA, right?
I did my master's in finance. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Not an MBA, but I did my MS in finance.
Yeah. So so you're a master. So walk us through this. Yeah. So CA, MBA, IITM used to be pretty much enough to get into these jobs. And it still is, I guess, because those are the bare minimum requirements, I think.
Yes.
And the better, the better your pedigree, the better your chances of getting the job, up to a certain extent, because of course, these days, even I don't have an idea on what people hire. But anyway, technology has disrupted a lot of things. You spoke specifically about fintech and about how fintech guys have, are among the biggest hirers right now. So just explain to our listeners how technology has changed the scope of skills that is required in this industry.
Correct. See, today's rate of sort of technological and even regulatory change is absolutely unprecedented. And I personally think the whole fintech phenomena has completely shaken up the financial services sector at every level. Right? I mean, just look at it from a day-to-day basis. People are transacting in terms of wallets. People are now sending money via UPI. Today, even you're paying your credit card bills through a third-party application like a credit, right? And there's been a complete sort of shake-up in the way in which financial services are being offered. Even banks are constantly on the lookout for new technologies because they want to improve the efficiency, they want to improve the speed of service, and provide a sort of customized customer experience. See, banks today are able to mine consumer data in unimaginable ways. Right? People who are able to design and think of and deploy these technologies will be in absolute great demand. Right? Today, you look at it from a traditional function where a bank gives a loan to a customer. Earlier, you go to a bank, you submit papers, he'll send it to the credit team. It'll take 4-5 weeks to come back, and you'll get answers. Today, banks are specializing and differentiating themselves, saying that apply for a loan. You'll get a reply in 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Now, how is it that they are able to short circuit a 3-week process in 3 minutes, right? And that's largely because of the technology that is available to them. Whenever you put in your details, a bank can easily take out 17, 18, 19 data points in matter of milliseconds, right? They know, they've profiled the customer, they know what your income is, they know your last transactions, they know what you're most likely to buy. And thus, they will sell you a product that you're most likely to buy, right? So I think the entire sort of scope of technology in financial services has completely changed. Even now with robotics and artificial intelligence, even things like advisory is now, banks are sort of experimenting with things like robo advisory, right? So I personally think the demand for, let's say, financial engineers, computational experts, data scientists and designers, mind you, you'll be surprised. Financial sector is hiring a lot of design thinking experts that understand user interface, UI, can understand user experience, UX, and can make that process seamless is something that the banks are really, really investing in. See, when we did our CA and MBA, traditional functions like auditing, accounting, recon, and even credit, right, were the core functions of a chartered accountant. But now that entire process is automated, right? And it's high time our sort of education system keeps up with this huge change. A CA degree, I bet you in the next 15 years is going to look completely different. If you track some of the most significant MBA programs in the world, all of them have a data scientist and a machine learning component to them, right? Even today, with all due respect to all professions, when we speak to recruiters on a day-to-day basis because they come to the academy to hire our students. and they say that they hire a CA and MBA less for the sort of accounting prowess or the accounting knowledge that the chartered accountant brings, but more because it's a signal to the market that this individual is someone who has been through a rigorous, disciplined fashion and knows how to work hard, right? So I think the rate of change in financial services because of technology is completely different. You look at the likes of a DBS bank, they're operating a bank without a branch, right? It's complete digital banking, right? So in the face of such changes, the requirements of people that they will look at hiring will also significantly change, and that's essentially how technology has disrupted things in this
Very,
space. Yeah.
very interesting. And I mean, I don't know what courses are out there for someone to learn this, but I guess coding has become suddenly very important if you go by the ads. So, okay,
Yeah,
anyway, so
absolutely.
you spoke about people who come to MDAE, and you have conversation with them. And I'm sure that you've got a fairly good placement cell, and you
Yeah.
also would be counseling your students on how to go forward in the next step of their career. So tell us, what are the key areas within finance that are hiring right now? What are the hot jobs, so to say, and even probably with economics, if at all, you can give us some clue on
Sure.
that.
So again, because of the pandemic, the whole adoption of digital services has been even deeper. And HR heads are now scouting very, very different forms of talent. Uh, if you go to Glassdoor, there was an article I read that the sexiest job of the 21st century is to be a data scientist, or to be a data engineer, or to be a data architect. Given digitization, the need of data scientists, let's say in fraud detection teams, in marketing teams, in risk analytics teams, is growing very, very evidently at a very, very rapid pace. So I would say, the role of a data scientist or a data engineer or an architect in some of these departments is something that we're seeing is hiring right now. The second area is, AI. Banks, as I said, want to reduce turnaround time. They want to be able to give a credit facility instantly, right? And what AI does is enables the process of asking less and deducing more, right? So, you look at, as I said, these new marketing campaigns for loans are created around getting instant approvals and getting an instant disbursement. And all of that is happening because of AI, right? So that's another key area that is currently hiring a lot in the financial services space. Given digitization, there are also risks of, IT malfunctions. So we're seeing a huge rise in the demand of cybersecurity experts. A lot of banks have already established a chief security officer as one of their key functions. Right now, you see phishing calls, bank frauds have increased quite significantly, and banks are now looking at hiring ethical hackers, right? Because when you transact so frequently today, you're buying stuff off of Flipkart, you're ordering food on a Swiggy, you're rating the restaurant through a Zomato, the risk of your financial information being compromised also significantly rises, and banks have to sort of prevent and protect against that skill, right? So the developments, the requirements for ethical hackers or cybersecurity experts have been extremely high. And lastly, this is something that we see a lot of banks and financial institutions come to our academy to hire. They are hiring economists, social scientists, ethnographers, behavioral experts. See, today
Wow.
financial services is all about customization. Unless you can understand your customer, unless you can profile your customer, unless you can target the customer in a very, very specific way, you're going to land up spending a lot of marketing monies on customer acquisition, right? And which is why banks are hiring customer profilers, they're hiring ethnographers, social scientists. Economists are being hired in banks now, not just to provide a view on where the economy is going, but also to give the bank and the marketing team a deeper insights towards what is pushing people, what incentivizes people, right? What challenges people. And that's the kind of inputs that we're seeing banks come to us for. So these are largely 4 or 5 key areas that I strongly feel are hiring right now, right, in
Okay.
the financial services space.
Sure. Let's wrap this up, Karan. The main question, I guess, the one that all of our listeners have been waiting for, and all your experience at the Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. What's your list of tips or ideas or advice to our young listeners out there that are looking to making a career in finance, is in stock markets? What just tell us what are the things that all of them should keep in mind.
Wow, it's very gratifying that somebody's asking me for some tips. Actually, usually I've been the one on the asking end. So,
Yeah.
forgive me if the answer is not holistic because I'm not used to giving such answers. But just a few sort of takeaways, and I'd like to share this from my experience more than anything. Is that don't think of your first job as your dream job, right? So at the academy, I know a lot of students that prefer being out of the market because they're waiting for the perfect opportunity, whether in terms of role, salary, brand of the company. The waiting game can last really long, right? Financial services is cutthroat, right? If you have an opportunity to get your foot through the door, grab it, right? Again, think of your career as investing in a blue chip company. Have a long term view, right? Don't take stock every week and month, right? And keep comparing whether you're in the right job or not. Give it a little bit of time. So I would definitely say that don't think of your first job as your dream job. Make sure it's a stepping stone. I remember there were so many interviews that I gave that I did not and I bombed them. I couldn't get through the interview. So I know I was interviewing in London, and the first 14, 15 interviews that I got rejected in the second round, right? And I was really, really dejected. And when the 16th and 17th offer came in, I was being picky. I was saying, I've waited this long. Is this the right company? Is this the right role? Is this going to take me one step further? And I procrastinated, right? And instead of being at home for 3 months, if I would have worked in a small financial services firm, I would have gathered the experience that would allow me to then maneuver. So, I would definitely say that, that's something that I've kept close to my heart. The second tip is, as young listeners, and this is again something that I was plagued with during my college days, is I kept comparing myself with the first ranker. I kept comparing myself with where I stood amongst my peers, right? And I was always unhappy, right? I never looked at the 8 other people that were below me, but I always looked at the 4 other people that were above me, right? And for some reason I was never happy, right? So it's something that I'm learning even to date to deal with, which is trying and being slightly more happy with where I am by, being more content with where I am. I was reading this quote because we were following the American elections that Obama actually retired at 55, but Trump started at 70, right? So
nice.
Everyone is in their own time zone. Everyone moves across their own pace. I think it's very, very comfortable to. I think it's very, very important to be comfortable in your own skill. So these are two, three things that I think is something that I'm working on, right? The third thing, as I said, is be curious, right? Be a learner, right? Virtually every problem that the world is facing today, whether it's global warming, whether it's poverty, whether it's conflicts in Afghanistan and Syria, and even now health, right?
Sure.
Everything has a strong fundamental understanding, right? And if you develop a curious mindset and figure out how these things are linked, how one connects to another, right? Constantly improve, learn outside of your industry. If you're a financial services professional, don't just read finance books. Don't just read Economic Times. Read about behavior, read about change, read about sociology, read about culture, because all of that will have a strong input in helping you become a better professional. So I think it's very important for people, and just to summarize, the third point is to try and be multifaceted and multidimensional rather than unidimensional. So these are the 3 things. I don't really know if these are the mantras for success, but I think these are just 3 points that I sort of try and go back to at all stages of my career.
Sure. Finally, what does MDAE do? Can you just give our listeners a brief overview about the courses, and everything else at Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics?
Sure. So, it's very interesting, Anupam. 15, 20 years ago, people used to look upon economics as a very, very theoretical profession. So, if you want to sort of become a teacher or a PhD professional, you do economics. If you want to run away from math, you do economics. Even in a college system, you look at science, then you look at commerce, then you look at arts. And the requirement for quants in arts has always been so low. And that's such a myth, because if you look at economics, is nothing but applied mathematics, right? So we wanted to really sort of change this perception around economics, right? We feel the demand for economists in a bank, financial institution, data analytics firm, or a policy research firm has really, really shot off the roof. And unfortunately, most of the economics knowledge or training in our country is still very, very academic and still very, very theoretical. So the whole idea behind setting up the Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics was to provide students with the right applied skills to succeed as what we call market economists or professional economists. So that was the intention with which we started, 5 years ago. If you see, our academy has actually been initiated by some of India's leading economists and financial professionals, that have worked with organizations like the IMF, Aditya Birla Group, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, and it's a long list. Over the past 5 years, we've provided our flagship course, which is the 1-year postgraduate diploma in economics. It's the LSE style 1-year master's model that is offered in some of the top schools in Europe. And we've trained close to 200 alumni over the past 5 years. Last year, we started our second full-time course, which is a full-time course in data science and finance. We've spoken a lot about data, spoken a lot about AI, and you'll be surprised that 65% of all data scientist recruitment in the country happens in the financial services sector. So finance is actually the largest absorber of data scientists in the country today. So we designed a course that marries the two functions, gives you the technical skills to succeed as a data scientist and gives you the domain skills to succeed in the financial services field. So last year is when we ventured out into our second full-time course. And since the start of the pandemic, we've also embraced change. We've now moved to a complete sort of digital model. We've set up a new edtech vertical where we're bringing in experts from some of the top schools in the world, from some of the top companies in the world, to share their wisdom over short-term 10 to 15-hour courses every weekend. We've now done 18, 19 courses. We've trained thousands of students, and that's something that's going to continue for the next few years. So we're also sort of dipping our feet in the sort of digital education business, and we're also pivoting more towards online and remote as opposed to being a traditional brick and mortar player. But that's a little bit about what we've done over the past few years.
Where can our listeners get to know more about you? Your website?
Yes, absolutely. Please go on to our website, which is the www.meghnadesaiacademy.org. You can follow us on our social media handles, and you'll be apprised with new developments that are taking place at the academy. And would love to hear from you all. Would love to get some feedback. So feel free to drop me an email. My email is karan.shah@meghnadesaiacademy.org. And if there's something we can help you with, we'd love to.
Fantastic, Karan. That's very generous of you to give your email address out there. And I hope that our listeners will reach out to them and check out what is available at Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. Folks, that is a wrap on this episode of Paisa Vaisa. My guest, Karan Shah, CEO at Meghnad Desai Academy of Economics. Karan, thank you so much. I mean, it's such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for doing this for our listeners.
It's lovely, Anupam. Absolute pleasure once again to be invited to your podcast, and hope you do another 300 more, and I get invited many more times.
Oh, of course you will, and I hope that the next time is face to face.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anupam. Have a great day, and look forward to engaging again.
Sure. Thanks, Karan. And listeners, if you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on our social media. We are IVM Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I'm B50 on Twitter. And thank you so much for listening to Paisa Vaisa.
No material on the show should be considered as financial advice. The material on the show is for informational purposes only. Please consult a financial advisor before taking any investment decision.
Working Monday to Friday glued to your chair making you feel dull? Worry not. Get your 5-minute weekly dose of travel around the world with postcards from nowhere. Join me every Thursday as I explore the strange, obscure, and fascinating parts of the world and bring out facets of travel you may not have thought of before. You can find us on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.
What are some of the radical changes that are now shaping our workspace? With physical distancing and heightened safety protocols being the norm, will technology finally make its large-scale entry to the workspace? Will design as we know it change for the long term? Is it possible for the Indian commercial real estate space to adopt a 360-degree approach to sustainability? Join our hosts at the Future of Space podcast by RMZ as we deliberate with industry leaders, analysts, and bright young minds on the way forward for the workspace given the new COVID normal. Tune in to the IVM Podcasts app or wherever you stream your favorite podcasts